Okay, so we're live.
Yeah, we live.
Okay, so you just want to go through like a general checklist of pull request reviews, is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all we can do is share my screen. And if that'll help. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, let me just check. Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, good. Let's see. So what I actually did was I'm using this opportunity to create something on the wiki, a general checklist for reviewing pull requests, and I'll put this on the home page when we're done. But I'm going to put this out there and encourage everybody else to go and edit this,
Yes.
add to it, things like that. So in terms of how I generally go through a pull request, it's kind of like this. I'm glad you asked because it prompted me to write down the steps. So first of all, and what I did initially was I actually wrote up the steps in the context of your specific PR. So we can talk about that in a second. But so really, of course, most of these steps, in fact, all of them are fairly obvious, but they're really important, I think.
Yeah.
So first one, of course, is to read the waffle story and every comment that's been added to it. So frequently there are the stories been added to, comments have been added, things like that. I would also recommend in here read related stories. I probably should put that in the outline here. In fact, let me do that while we're talking.
But sometimes it might be a bit hard to know the related stories.
Yeah.
How is that there's a related story to this particular?
Well, generally, if we're doing our job right, there'll be a comment in there. This is related to. So I do that in stories a lot. So stories that were, for instance, related to job matching. So we'd have stories for the UI for job matching. But I would put in there a story that it's related to, or it depends upon another story that actually has to implement the API to talk to the backend for the matching activity, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's related stories that are things that have to precede this story, like this story is gated by another story, or a story is related to another story. And really, the author should put in a comment in the story, this is related to story XYZ. If they don't, and you're not familiar with the system, so you might know what related stories are, then that's okay, just keep going. And if you run into a problem that seems to be related to this, just reach out on Slack and ask people. But generally, that would be the first thing to do, obviously, and it's fairly, I'm sure everybody does that. And then pull the branch, pull the feature branch and stand up the app. This is really important. Don't just look at the code in GitHub. You should because you're going to miss things. And then exercise the code in the UI. Pull the branch, stand up the app, and exercise the code in the UI. So, for instance, for your PR,
by stand up, you mean?
Stand up the app. Yeah, basically start the Rails server against the feature branch. Should I change that wording? Yeah, let me do that. That better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Whole feature branch. I'll just say branch because it'll be a chore or feature might get confusing. Not always a user feature. Okay, so run it through its paces. So there's two things that I did that made me notice that your initial take on the PR was exactly what the story said, which is to enable the fields to show up in the form. However, when I first looked at the code in my editor, actually no. When I first looked at the code in the UI, I noticed that when I actually tried to save something without entering an address, it failed. And we know why, of course, because it's trying to validate that the address is not empty, et cetera, et cetera. So the story actually changed from just making the fields show up in the form to make sure that the form actually works as intended, which is more work.
Yeah.
But if I had just looked at your code in GitHub and said, yeah, that looks like valid code and it seems to work, I would have missed that. So it's absolutely vital. Exercise the code in the UI. Or if there's not a UI component, then exercise it some other way. Build a test harness to execute the code. Unless it's really trivial. You don't always have to do this. You know, if it's a one-line change, that kind of thing. But yours was important enough and far-reaching enough, I had to poke at it. That also is where I ran into, well, gee, for a new registration, I don't have the address fields. That must be a mistake on the part of Segou. And I put that in there. And then you explained to me, no, the user experience would be better without that initially. And I said, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we had a good back and forth on that.
Yeah.
And that only came from me looking at the UI. I would not have noticed that probably just looking at the GitHub code changes. And then run the RSpec tests with external services blocked. So that means, do you know what I mean by that?
Not really.
Yeah, let me look at that real quickly. So if we go into, let's see. Around here. No, not there. It would be spec. Oh. So for the RSpec test, we're under the spec directory, spechelper.rb. There is this line 34. That basically says, so we're using this thing called webmock. You're probably familiar with it?
Yes.
That's how we stub out external service calls, so we don't actually call an external service. However, this particular directive says to webmock, if a test is running and it actually tries to connect to an external service, not stub, let it go ahead and do that. Which we actually need to put this in here because the feature test, the Cucumber test, they actually talk to external services. And if we disallowed external service calls, the feature test would fail. However, for our spec test, sorry, go ahead.
So the feature test that you normally do actually runs on the Java backend that was done earlier on the resume stuff.
They do, yeah. Well, actually, it wasn't even done a year ago. It's been ongoing, continuous development. Of course, recently we've got the API to talk to it correctly. So yeah, so that talks to that service. It talks to the pusher service. Because we use that, and that talks to a real service. We don't stub out pusher except in RSpec tests.
All right, so that actually means that for every RSpec that I'm running, I need to be connected. For every test that I'm running, I need to be connected to the internet.
For the acceptance tests, yes.
Yeah.
Because we want to run that in a realistic situation as possible, which means the acceptance test should be able to talk to external services. So there's a difference of opinion on this. Some people say all tests, regardless of type, should be stubbed. Shouldn't talk to any external service. We've chosen for acceptance tests to allow for that to happen.
Okay.
We also talked to the Mailgun email validation service. And again, for RSpec tests, we stub that. For acceptance tests, we don't. However, for this particular recommendation here, for RSpec tests, which should all be stubbed, if we run an RSpec test with this commented out, then any RSpec test that tries to connect to an external service will have an exception thrown by webmock. It'll tell us you're not allowed to connect to an external service, but you are trying to. And so, like just yesterday when I was going through this, I did the RSpec against all of them. I don't know if you saw. I think Arun took that story. Where did he put it? We have musical accompaniment, huh?
Yeah, there's a church in the background.
There's a what in the background?
A church.
Oh, a church. Yes.
Yeah, there's a check in the background. So I'm really trying to run away from it.
Oh, don't worry about it.
How is it right now? Is it better?
Yeah, it doesn't. It's a happy background noise, so no problem there.
Oh, okay.
There we go. So just so you know, yesterday I ran the RSpec test with my external service not stubbed out, or with disabling the ability to access external services, and I think there's something like 16 tests here that failed over 2 files. So actually, Arun's already put a PR in against this, and we just changed some stubbing in both of the results. So that's what's behind that step there. So, and when you do that, of course, you gotta remember, well, you're not going to be pushing your feature branch up that you pulled, so it doesn't matter, but try to remember to undo that.
So does it mean that when I don't allow connections for the web mock, when I don't allow connections to the internet, some tests should be passing? All the tests, actually.
All the tests should be passing. The only ones that don't will be ones that are not stubbed. So hopefully, if you're dealing with a code base that you pulled from upstream, all of the RSpec tests are stubbed. And the only thing that breaks because it's not stubbed might be your test. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But periodically we have changes made, and I don't remember to test non-spec test, non-stub spec test, so it happens. But anyway, look for anything that breaks because your test for your PR.
Okay.
So these are not necessarily all in exact sequence that you do these in, but anyway, so then of course review the code changes from GitHub, right? That's clearly what we do, but I find that to be very insufficient. Not enough. You have to look at the code in your editor as well. So that's a very important thing. So as I noted here, when I was talking about this, you put changes in the editor. That's how I noticed this on your PR, that you were using that method address is empty.
Address is empty, yes.
Yeah, but you were creating in your controller action, if you remember, you were getting your own parameter listing.
Yes.
But then address is empty, it was getting a separate parameter listing and checking that parameter listing if the address is empty. And that's where I noticed there was discrepancy in how that method is being used. If I had just looked at the code changes in GitHub without the full context, I don't think I would have I probably wouldn't have noticed that. Or maybe I would have, but it wouldn't have been as clear to me as it is when I can look at the editor and see all of the code really quickly in a file. So that's really critical. So don't just look at the code changes to GitHub. Again, if it's a very small PR, it's obvious, a couple of lines change, you don't need to look at it in your editor, right? But most of the PRs we get like you did, the significant PRs, you need to look at it in your editor. And then also, just in there, everybody has their own checklist. But when you look at a code, look at style, code that's unclear, your PR didn't have any of this. Some PRs come through and the code is too clever, tries to be too clever, and it's unclear. You got to look at a line of code and scratch your head what it's doing. That tells you that it's a little bit, it could be refactored probably. Another one that I see, that I really recommend is the code really needs a comment to explain what's going on. Then put a comment in there. Some people get religious about comments, and they say no comments should ever appear in code. The code should be self-commented. Okay, well, that's great, but if the code relies upon what I would call contextual matters, if the code depends upon things in the environment to be present, and things could be environment, could be I don't know what, but something outside of the scope of the code I'm looking at that moment, then put a comment in there. and give the reader a break. I should have come up with a really good example on that recently, but I'll have to find something. I'll find an example and put it in this. But we've all seen code where you look at it and say, you know what? There really should be a line of comment there explaining what's going on here, because it really isn't apparent to me. And then, of course, look for opportunities to refactor. Some code should be refactored. If you had put address is empty directly in your action, I would probably say, hey, why don't you make a method called address is empty and call that, because that can be used elsewhere as well. Which you did. You already did that, but that's an example. Also, code that is unneeded. So new people come to the project, they write a PR, and they don't know that there are utility methods or helper methods that they can use rather than write the code again in their PR. So things like that. Now, everybody has their own list, and I think we should all look at this and add to this as we go along. What are the checklist items when you're looking at the code? And then lastly, confirm sufficient acceptance or cucumber test coverage, and confirm sufficient RSpec. So RSpec, of course, is at the unit and the functional level or the model and controller level. So obviously, if we're doing controller stuff, we want to see controller tests in there that cover the main actions of the controller, as well as model methods, model validations, all that good stuff, which I think we do a pretty good job at. And then acceptance test coverage. That was a good discussion you and I had about, and I think you had the right question, which is, how do I test this at the acceptance test level? If I have 3 different address fields, there are 6 different combinations of address fields that the user could enter into it. Do I have to test all 6 combinations? And the answer is no, because the logic works the same across all those combinations. So 1 or 2, and I think you put 2 or 3 situations or combinations in your acceptance test, and that's sufficient. That's enough. If you've done all 6, it would just been useless, endless testing for no apparent additional value. You know, but it's a judgment call. The main thing is, as a user, what is this UI supposed to do, and make sure that I cover everything it's supposed to do that I can see, but I don't have to cover every possible permutation or combination, as long as the code for those permutations is the same. It's just the input is different, right? Also, you have happy and sad paths, and that's good. That's good. So that's the key thing. So we test. I'll put some more detail on this. We test all the actions that the user should see, and all the happy and sad paths, including bad data entered by the user, data missing, right? All that. So that's pretty much it.
So on the review code changes in context in your editor. Now, assuming I've sent a pull request to you, and you've already forked it in your local machine.
Right.
Do you use git diff to know the changes that I made, or you have to go back to GitHub and check out the diff? How exactly do you go about that?
I generally go back to GitHub. I gotta go back and forth. Where in GitHub did the changes occur? So what I would do? So I would say that so if you look at my remotes, I have a remote set up into the repo for pretty much everybody who's worked on the project. Right? And so what I would do is I would see that your feature branch is called JS address attribute, right? So I do this: git fetch. First of all, I do git fetch Sigo if I haven't fetched the latest. I'm up to date with respect to all the branches in your code, but if I wasn't, git fetch Sigo will bring the additional feature branches in your repo that have been added since I last fetched. But anyway, I've got pointers to everything in your repo. That's what's telling me there. So I'll do this git fetch. And it's JS underscore. So GitHub is smart enough. When I just do JS underscore and hit tab, it says, oh, you're trying to go to this repo and you're looking for a branch that begins with JS underscore. and it will fill this out for me. And it's basically saying, okay, so can you see that, by the way? That may be too low for you.
I can see.
You can see it? Okay. So let me just do that again. So it's very useful. GitHub's pretty smart. So, okay, it knows I want to go to Signal and get a feature branch called beginning with JS underscore. I hit tab, and it says, okay, we'll get that branch for you, and I will name it in your local GitHub environment the same name as upstream, as where I pulled it from. But what I tend to do is, because I want to keep track of who owns that feature branch, I'll put the name of the user there. So I will put Sigma dash, right? So actually, let me do that. Okay. So what this is saying is I've already got a feature branch called that, so I can't get into it. So I won't bother to do that right now, but you can see it does that already, right? So, you know, I looked at Hinesh's PR the other day, so there's his feature branch is called.
Okay, so after you've gotten it in,
after got what?
After you have fetched the changes,
yeah,
and you have it in your local repository.
Yeah.
Now you do a git diff, or you have to go to GitHub and check that he made a change on the controller, he made a change on the model, he did this. Do you do everything online, or you have to go offline, or you have to go online again on GitHub to check?
Oh, I see. So what I would do, I mean, if I'm online, I would definitely start with GitHub, because that points me at the places in the code that have changed. Then I'll go back to the editor and look at that in context, in a larger context. So that's a faster way. Generally, you know, I could do git diff my local development branch against. You do that. Obviously, if I'm offline, it's just harder to read. You know, it's not as easily. You can't easily pick up all the changes that occurred as you can by scanning GitHub. But it's doable. Eventually, it's doable.
Okay, so it's easier if you go to GitHub and check the differences, come back and check.
Yeah, that's what I do, because visually it's just easier to scan GitHub and see the changes. So,
all right, okay.
Yeah. So that's essentially what I do when if I do the complete list, if it's complex PR, like yours.
So if everything passes, then you merge it straight to develop, or you push and merge through it, or either is okay.
Say that again. I didn't quite follow that.
Okay, if everything is okay, with the pull request, do you merge it back on your local repo, or you go online and merge it through GitHub, or you can do either of them?
I don't do. If everything's okay, I never touch the developer's repo. I don't have the rights actually to push up to their repo. I just actually, if I notice anything, I just make comments in GitHub that I can do. So I never. Once in a while, if I've got a situation where I've made changes to a PR in my local environment to make the PR work, I will push that up to my repo. So it would be like I push it up to my repo, and then I would go to, let's say here. Where is Sigo? Hi Sigo. Is the changes in your PR code, you know, my repo branch.
Yeah, I can remember.
What's that?
Yeah, I can remember. You ever done?
Yeah, exactly.
Before.
Well, I'll just do that, and then so rather than trying to struggle with the same thing that I already did, I'll just do that. And then they can go and look at my repo. They can pull it down locally. You can pull down locally Sigma JS address attributes, do a diff against JS address attributes, and then bring in my changes or not. But that's the only time I will actually push it. I will change the PR code in my local environment and push it up to my repo Only when I want the developer to see what I've done in their PR, because it might help them. That's the only time. So, yeah.
All right.
That's a good point. So that's a good practice. I've adopted that practice as well.
Okay, so I don't think there's anything which is not clear now.
Yeah, it's all pretty basic stuff, right?
Yes.
I found it useful to actually write this list down, so I'm glad you prompted me. To think, oh yeah, what are the things that I generally do, or I want to do, or anything else? Again, this is greatly simplified. If it's a fairly simple trivial PR, you don't do all this stuff. But so thanks for prompting the discussion.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is
All right.
I'm going to post this to the homepage, and then I'm going to put
Yeah.
something on the MechPlus channel and ask people to look at it and edit or expand it as they see fit.
Okay.
So I think this is a great addition to the group.
All right then.
All right. So what kind of denomination is that in the background?
It's a Christian church. I don't have the details about it actually. They're actually in our neighborhood, so.
They're your neighbor?
Yeah, they are neighbors.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, so they have services in their house.
Yeah, they're having a service right now. I don't know what it is. I've actually just traveled from Nairobi. I'm now in Kisumu, so there are neighbors that are in Kisumu. I've just been informed they've been like this for the past 1 week, day and night, doing their, I think it's fasting and praying or something.
Oh, the neighbors?
So, yeah, they are immediate neighbors.
Oh, I see. So do they do this every day?
Yeah, I've been informed it's been like this for the past 1 week.
Does it go on for a very long time, or is it only like an hour or so?
They do it, I don't know what time they go to work, but maybe they've dedicated the first 1 week of the year or the first week, 2 weeks of the year just to do this, to pray for the whole year. I don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's nice.
So it's a Swahili song in the background.
Swahili, huh?
Yeah, it's a Swahili song.
Oh.
Yeah. It's pretty hot here.
It is, huh?
Yeah, it's very hot. Right now, the problem with you guys, you use some Fahrenheit.
Yes.
You guys, yeah, so it's 34 degrees centigrade. We're used to the centigrade thing.
34 degrees. So that's like 70 plus 30. That's a little over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Right? So it's 34 times 1.8 plus 32, whatever that is.
I'm not mathy at all.
What's that?
So that's the temperatures in Kisumu right now.
Yeah, that's high 90s or low 100s. So that's very, very hot. Yeah,
Yes.
That is hot. So you're taking it into account.
Yes. So thank you very much, Patrick.
Okay, yeah. Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing this up. Good topic.
All right. Okay.
All
so
right.
you can help me with the link. Yeah. Just send me the link immediately after this. I can share it with my other friends.
Okay, I'll put it on the MechPlus channel.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sigil.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye now.
All right.